Hi, everybody, and welcome to Out of the Gate, Daily Racing Form's weekend handicapping preview program. I'm Dan Ullman. Thanks so much for watching. Here's what's coming up in this week's edition of Out of the Gate. We are deep into Kentucky Derby prep season, and we have 3 huge Kentucky Derby preps to handicap this week. Matt Bernier, Mike Beer, and I will discuss the Bluegrass Stakes at Keeneland, the Wood Memorial at Aqueduct, and the Santa Anita Derby at the Great Race Place. David Aragona of Timeform US spotlights the Bluegrass, while Nicole Russo takes a look at some interesting pedigrees in both the Wood Memorial and the Bluegrass. Finally, Craig Milkowski's Timeform US Pace Projector segment focuses on the Royal Heroine. Plus, we'll have best bets, horses to watch, and lots more. So let's break Out of the Gate. We begin Out of the Gate with our Horse Watch segment. Mike Beer, NYRA analyst, you've gone fishing to Oaklawn and you found an undefeated filly lurking under the radar.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with Break Even. She's a Klein homebred trained by Brad Cox. We're going to look at her start last weekend at Oaklawn. This is her stakes debut. She got started at Fairgrounds over the winter, won her first 2 starts really easily. Tried a little bit of tougher competition here and won just as easily, got right to the front. She's got a lot of speed and she just keeps going through the stretch, never lets this field in. Her 3rd straight really easy win. This one with a 94 by her speed figure. This filly's got a lot of potential for a very good trainer.
That race was easy. It was like breaking sticks. And Matt, we took a look at your Horse Watch's video before we went on the air. We were wowed by this late turn of foot.
Yeah, she's got a big turn of foot. This is a filly called Fekiness. She's out there in Southern California. This is her 2nd start going down the hill. She's only started 4 times as a 4-year-old, but take a look at this late turn of foot. She's going to lean in and just barely graze the horse to her inside here, and I think that's what's going to prompt that late lead change there back to the left. She'll eventually correct things, but she finishes like a house of fire, and the interesting thing now is she's 2 for 2 going down the hill. They had run her going longer earlier in her career in the first 2 starts. I would imagine you've got to find out if she can successfully stretch out to a mile, but it looks like Ronis Racing's got another good one.
You guys might have stakes horses on the horizon. I'm simply looking for a $50,000 starter allowance for Transistor, who last ran in a 7-furlong race at Gulfstream over a speed-favoring track. 7 furlongs is just too short for Transistor. This race, this day, was dominated by horses on the front end. They ran 1-2 around the track. Transistor is the only horse doing any kind of running, and you're going to see at the very end of this video, he's going to get up into 3rd, and he is running at the end of this race. He raced for Rudy Rodriguez in New York over the spring and summer, and I wouldn't be surprised if he returns to New York. He has improved with blinkers, and again, I think that $50,000 starter allowance condition hits Transistor right between the eyes. You got to stretch out a little bit more, though. A mile and a 16th works well for him. Let's get to some handicapping. The first of 3 Kentucky Derby preps we'll preview on Out of the Gate, the Bluegrass. Let's throw up the field for the Grade 2 $1 million Bluegrass Stakes at Keeneland on Saturday. Carded as race number 10, basically a win and you're in for the Kentucky Derby. For expanded stakes previews of all the graded stakes races this weekend, head on over to video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Mike, the morning line favorite, the number 2 Vacoma, did some very good things around 1 turn in New York last year at 2, and I thought the first start at 3 in Florida was a useful prep.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad in the Fountain of Youth. His first 2 starts, as you mentioned, as a 2-year-old, not only were they good, they were fast. He was a good 2-year-old. We're going to look at his Fountain of Youth now. He could only get up for 3rd at the end. You can see him right there in contention. He basically got the same trip as the winner, Code of Honor. He's a little bit wider than that horse, and you can see here he just can't kick with that horse. Distance is the real question for him, guys. Whether he can get the 9 furlongs is something he has to prove on Saturday. I think there's a real question of how far he wants to go, but if he gets the 9, it's going to be real tough to beat in here.
Matt, your top selection in this race is sort of like a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde candidate. His race 2 starts back at the Fairgrounds when he behaved himself. I thought that was a sensational effort. And then last time out in the Tampa Bay Derby, Dreammaker was up to his old tricks.
Dreammaker, I don't know what the hell happened down in Tampa, but it was a situation where going into it, that run at the Fairgrounds, I looked at it and said, if he runs that race, I think he's going to win. And for one reason or another, he didn't get out of the gate all that well. He just never picked his feet up. This is him back as a 2-year-old. You see him in those Oxley silks, the yellow and blue. He's a little bit green. He's in behind horses. I'm not going to hold this against him. Then he came back in the Breeders' Futurity, just had a terrible start. So you draw a line through that. That run at the Fairgrounds, I kind of maintain If I liked him in the Tampa Bay Derby at 7-2 on the heels of that effort at the fairgrounds, I kind of have to like him here at 2 or 3 times the price, don't I?
Yeah, I agree with Matt too. I can just imagine you, Matt, since you liked him last time, watching the replay of the Tampa Bay Derby and going, "Oh man, now I got to bet him back next time. Nothing went right for him in there." I don't know how much I trust him, guys, but this is a race where I wanted a price. If he's anything like that 12-1 on the morning line, I can give him a chance in this race.
He just has his quirks. I thought he hated being down inside on the far turn and just really started fooling around with his lead changes. Once he got to the outside, it looked like he was racing on at the end. If Florent Geroux can get him to the outside early and in the clear, I wouldn't be surprised if this horse reverts back to his good form. I'm going to go with the horse that finished ahead of him in the Tampa Bay Derby. That's Win, 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 who was the beaten favorite that day. His first start around 2 turns distance going to be a big question for Win, Win, Win as he tries to navigate another 16th of a mile. Here you see him on the far outside. As usual, Win, Win, Win didn't break very well. He was pinched at the start. He was far back early. He was 4 wide on the backstretch all the way through the turn. And he still's got to look at this in the last 16th of a mile. And I wonder if he's starting to feel the effects of the distance. All in all, I thought it was a good enough effort to keep him on the trail in the Bluegrass. 1 1/8 is a big ask. The key for him is the start. If he gets out of the gate and works out a second flight trip, I think Win, Win, Win has just as much natural talent as any horse in this field. Pedigree so important as these 3-year-olds stretch out to 9 furlongs. Nicole Russo's Pedigree Pick segment focuses on the bloodlines of several of the main contenders in both the Wood Memorial and the Bluegrass. And then we've got Craig Milkowski from Timeform US taking a look at one of the undercard races on Santa Anita Derby Day, the Providencia.
Hey everyone, Nicole Russo coming to you by phone from Keeneland in Lexington, Kentucky, the site of one of the 3 Kentucky Derby preps on Saturday that offer 100 points to the winners. For today's pedigree analysis on Out of the Gate, we're going to take a look at 2 colts coming into these Derby preps off stakes wins, but with major questions surrounding them. We'll begin right here at Keeneland with a look at the full field for the Bluegrass Stakes. And down inside and expected to dictate the pace is Some Like It Hot Brown, who has won consecutive stakes around 2 turns, but on the synthetic surface at Turfway Park, most recently the Jeff Ruby at 9 furlongs. I like that he's clearly got this route ability, but the question with him is if he can transfer that form to dirt. He started once on the dirt, well beaten in a sprint on a sloppy track in his career debut. A number of variables there that could lead you to write that off as just a baby learning curve, especially since he's clearly thrived with more distance. He's by Big Brown, who won on turf and can fire a nice turf horse, but of course Big Brown was a dual classic winner and has sired good dirt horses such as Grade 1 winner Dortmund. Some Like It Hot Brown is out of the Capit mare Marilyn Monroe, who was placed on synthetic, her dam a winning dirt sprinter. This is the family of champion Stevie Wonderboy and turf Grade 1 place the Vascon Series. Overall, it's a versatile family, and I do think Some Like It Hot Brown at least deserves a chance to try dirt again, especially around 2 turns. Now, we'll take a quick peek also at the Wood Memorial up at Aqueduct, where one of the big questions in this field is Haikal stretching out. He's won 3 straight, most recently going a mile in the Gotham, but his pedigree does give me pause going longer. He's by Cigar Mile winner Daher, whose best runners include graded winning sprinter Gypsy Robin, Haikal a half-brother to a Grade 1 winning sprinter in Takaful, and Takaful is by a more distance-oriented sire in Bernardini. So that tells you how strong the speed influence is in this family. The third dam is an English champion and classic winner, but that's starting to get farther back where it's maybe not as much of an influence as the immediate pedigree. That's a look at just a couple of the entrants in this weekend's Derby prep, a major weekend on the Classics Trail, and we're taking you through all of it here on Out of the Gate.
Hi, this is Craig Milkowski of Timeform US for this week's edition of Out of the Gate. In my pace projector segment, I'm going to do something a little bit different today, and I'm not picking out a race that favors horses on or near the lead or a race where we expect a fast pace. I went with the Grade 2 Royal Heroine Stakes being run as the 5th race at Santa Anita on Saturday on their big cap and Santa Anita Derby card. And I chose it because the number 2 horse, Miss Bad Behavior, is shown as having just a clear, easy lead in here. And this is actually a case of where I don't like a horse despite that seemingly tactical advantage. Let's take just a little bit closer look at the Timeform US pace projector, and you can see Miss Bad Behavior shown up well in front in the clear. You'll also notice in the bottom left-hand corner of the page that we have a horse lacking data. And that's a horse we're going to look at last, who's the horse I'm actually going to go with in here. And that's because the horse is shipping over from overseas, Europe notably, mostly England, ran in Germany. But first, let's take a look at Miss Bad Behavior. And you can see there, I've highlighted some of the reasons I just don't like this horse. And the main one being that she often finds herself with the clear lead at the same exact distance of 1 mile. And she just hasn't been able to get the job done. She hasn't been able to beat Vasilika, who you can see is in the field and is likely to be the heavy favorite in here. We'll talk about her in just a second as well. But whether the pace has been fast, whether the pace has been slow or just average, Miss Bad Behavior just hasn't been able to get it done. She's obviously a quality horse. She makes plenty of money for connections, but she's not a horse I want to take on the win end in here. Now let's move on to that morning line favorite, Vasilika, and she's quite a story. You can see in the upper right part of the screen, I've highlighted the notes section. This is a section of our PPs where you can put in your own notes. You'll also see Miss Bad Behavior just below there a few times. That's how we indicate horses that are also in this race from previous races. But she's actually won 10 of her last 11. She was claimed 12 starts ago. She ran a good second, first off the bench, or first off the claim. And then she's just been on a tear. Her only loss came in the Grade 1 Matriarch. She's now a Grade 1 winning filly. It's a mare actually now. She was a filly at the time. But just a solid, really good horse who she's going to be tough to beat. She runs better speed figures than most in here. She's consistently in the 120s. You may have noted Miss Bad Behavior tops out usually in the high teens. So she is going to be tough to beat. I'm going to use her, but the horse I'm going to bet to win and the horse that I'm going to box her in an exacta with is Raven's Lady. Now, this is a horse that's shipping in for trainer James Cassidy. He acquired her somehow from overseas. And I did look up his record, and to be honest, it's not that great. I think he's 1 for 21 in the last 5 years with horses shipping foreign shippers. But this horse is a little more interesting to me. She's got some things going for her. You may notice she was a 2-time winner, Grade 3 winner. Overseas, she won at York in England, and she also won at Baden-Baden in Germany. And she did it with very nice time form ratings. You can see 112, 113, and then she even tried Royal Ascot, or not Royal, it was just the Ascot meeting, where she ran a 114 despite being 4th. And also of note, that effort was over yielding course. But what I do like is that she was able to beat males. She is stretching out to a mile, which is a little longer than she's been running. But we've seen lots of horses come over who had been running in sprints and, for example, the Breeders' Cup Mile, and they seem to be able to handle the mile just fine. So for this week, Raven's Lady is going to be my pick. I'm going to bet her to win, and I'm also going to play her with Vasilika in smaller exacta boxes. That's it for me for this week on Timeform US for Out of the Gate, and I'll talk to you next week.
Are you a horse player looking to raise your game? For over 120 years, expert handicappers have relied on Daily Racing Form as their must-have source for news and data, featuring exclusive buyer speed figures, Timeform US pace figures, and integrated replays. DRF Formulator is the most powerful handicapping tool on the market today. Use what the pros use. Go to drf.com/formulator and enter code DRFTV to get your first card free. drf.com. Raise your game.
Welcome back to Out of the Gate. Let's throw up the field for the Grade 2 $750,000 Wood Memorial. We're going 1 1/8 on dirt at the Big A on Saturday, carded as race number 10 for expanded stakes previews of all the graded stakes races this weekend. Head on over to video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Mike, your top selection in this race, very familiar connections. Mr. Pletcher, Mr. Velasquez, part of a hot pace last time out in the Tampa Bay Derby, still hanging around at the end.
Yeah, he didn't run too badly at the Tampa Bay Derby last time. He was wider than a lot of horses in that race as well, close to a fast pace. here they are at the top of the stretch, and you can see he's right there in contention. He's not really finishing that strongly here, but he did a lot of work in the race. You can see Tacitus, who's down towards the inside, is eventually going to get up and close this thing down. But this horse ran really well in this race, I thought, considering just a second start as a 3-year-old, first time around 2 turns. If you can build off it, he's a horse that I could use in this race, mostly because, guys, the horses that are shorter prices than him, I just didn't really want to bet any of them.
Matt, your top selection in this race was an out-of-the-gate horse watch for you after a scintillating debut. Now he's taken the big step up in class and distance, but boy, Hoffa's Union buried the field last time.
Yeah, he really did, and he could be fool's gold in this spot, given the fact that he's getting a tremendous hike in class. But boy, what he did here in his career debut, it's kind of hard to argue with. He goes out there, wins by more than 15 lengths, a 95 Beyer, a raw 118 time form rating. Now he goes out for Mark Casse. Dylan Davis has the mount. I expect him to be relatively close, but again, he's going to be facing pace that he's never seen in his life before. Maybe he is a freak. I have no idea, but it's just one of those things where I feel like he's the X factor in the race. If he takes any kind of step forward, I think he's going to be a handful, but at the same time, I'm not going to argue with anyone that sits there and says this is way too much for him way too soon.
I feel the same way about my top selection in the Wood Memorial as I do with my top pick in the Bluegrass. I believe the number 4 Heichel has just as much natural talent as anybody in this race, but it's all about distance. This horse has won his last 3. He's done nothing wrong in his career. He took advantage of a great setup. Don't get me wrong, in the Grade 3 Gotham. You've got 3 horses that have been dueling for a long time. Heichel, who is a late runner, is going to take advantage. Once he gets into the clear under Rajiv Mirage, he's going to power past these tiring pace setters in the final 16th of a mile. Now, he's kind of got a sprinty pedigree, so we'll see if he wants to go 1 1/8, but he deserves an opportunity to go long, and there should be some pace in this race. Hoffa's Union has some speed. Not That Brady has some speed. There should be some others as well. There's a Todd Pletcher stretch-out sprinter that's going to be a big price. I'm interested to see what Heichel does. If he runs well here, it's obviously on to the Derby. If not, it's turning back in distances, and we wait for races like the H. Allen Jerkins in the summer. I'll go with Heichel. Also, keep an eye out for Tax in the Grade 2 Wood Memorial. Let's move out west. The Santa Anita Derby features 2-year-old champion, Game Winner. Let's meet the 3-year-olds getting set to go 1 1/8 at Santa Anita in the Grade 1 $1 million Santa Anita Derby, carded as race number 8 for expanded stakes previews of all the graded races all weekend long, plus lots more. Visit video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Matt, Bob Baffert has 2 in here. You're going with a quirky angle that's common in Southern California, the other Baffert.
Yeah, the other Baffert and Roadster. Roadster was a highly thought of 2-year-old. Baffert was almost more disappointed in the dud from him in the Futurity at Del Mar last year than he was Game Winner, actually winning that same race. He'd been gone for a long time, and then he faced off with Nolo Contesto for his 3-year-old debut. Let's take a look at that run. He never really got out of first gear. I thought it was a very confident ride from Mike Smith. I like the versatility. He can go or he can sit. The real question for him is the 1 1/8. We'll find out if he can handle it. But if he can't handle it, the one horse I do think can in this race is Nolo Contesto.
Yeah, that's where I went, Matt. He's coming out of the same race. You can see Roadster just getting away from him here at the end. But I don't know. When I watched that replay back, I think that was a really clever ride there by Mike Smith on Roadster, because he clearly could have taken that race over whenever he wanted to, but he waited until they got to the stretch because he knew we had Nolo Contesto locked in the box. I think it made all the difference in there. Nolo Contesto's got to take a step forward in here. I think he can do it, though. I liked his maiden win 2 starts back in January, and I think he ran better than it looks last time.
Those 2 horses have all the upside potential in the world, and they'll try to get the jump on the horse they're all going to have to beat. That's 2-year-old champion Game Winner, who made his seasonal debut in the slightly faster division of the Rebel Stakes at Oaklawn. We'll go back to that race right now, and he took on another Southern California invader in Omaha Beach, who got the jump on Game Winner, and I thought this was a fine effort from Game Winner. First start of the year, got bumped at the start, was 4 wide entering the final turn, bumped a couple of times with Omaha Beach. He's a real trier, and he's trying all the way down to the wire. He is not one of those typical Baffert brilliant horses that you're used to, like an American Pharaoh or a Justify or an Arrogate. He works hard in all of his races, and he might have to work hard in this race because there isn't a lot of pace, but I do think this horse has a lot of class, and the key factor might be the 1 mile and an eighth. I think this horse is really crying out for more distance. This is a big and important test for favored game winner in the Santa Anita Derby. Speaking of these Derby preps, we're going to go back to the Bluegrass because that race was a skullbuster. David Aragona of Timeform US offers some more clues.
Hi everyone, I'm David Aragona with this week's Timeform US Spotlight. There are 3 major Derby preps taking place across the country on Saturday, and I want to focus on the Grade 2 Bluegrass at Keeneland. I think of the 3 Derby preps that are taking place, this is the one that is most likely to produce a massive upset because I'm a little bit skeptical of the favorites in this race. We'll start by taking a look at the Timeform US pace projector, and the likely favorite Vekoma is predicted to be on the early lead. He's the number 2 horse. We'll see if that actually comes to fruition because Vekoma is really more of a stalking type, and I think the number 1, Some Like It Hot Brown, and the number 4, Market King, who are shown just behind him in the pace projector, are the 2 that are more likely to head out towards the front end because they're more front-running types. But there are other horses that could be forwardly placed in this race, like the number 10, Lucky Lee, who won an allowance race at Parks in wire-to-wire fashion back in November, and the number 12, Parsimony, who's shown some early pace in some of his races out in California. So this race could produce a fast pace. I'm not skeptical about that. I'm just not sure that Vekoma is actually going to be on the lead in this race, and we'll segue right into Vekoma's PPs because he is the major story in this Bluegrass. He's likely to go off at a prohibitively short price, and I'm a respect Vekoma. I think that he is the most talented horse in this race. He's clearly one of the fastest on speed figures. He's been ultra consistent throughout his career. You see those pair of 115 Timeform US speed figures and that 116 in the Nashua. I mean, a lot of those numbers could win Derby preps that we've been seeing. So he is definitely fast enough to win a race like the Bluegrass. The question is, can he handle the mile and an eighth distance? And I'm somewhat skeptical. As we've discussed, his dam was really more of a sprinting type. He was a son of Candy Ride, and he's got that weird action to him where he's a really powerful mover, but he's a powerful mover that I think is really built for speed, and I'm just not sure that he's going to be able to carry that speed all the way out to a mile and an eighth. I know that he got the 2 turns well enough last time in the Fountain of Youth, but he wasn't finishing off that race that strongly, and for me that performance didn't really suggest that he's going to relish added ground. I'm definitely using him because he is far and away the most talented horse in this field in my opinion. I'm just a little skeptical that I would want to bet him at a relatively short price. Another horse that's going to take some money in this race is the number 3, Signal Man. I don't really have anything against him as a player in this race. He's just a bit slower than some of the other main contenders. His win in the Kentucky Jockey Club, I know that Plusket Parfait, who was second in that race, came back and won the UAE Derby last weekend, but that was a pretty weak prep race. A lot of other horses have not come out of the Kentucky Jockey Club to run that well, Signal Man included, because frankly, his return to the Fountain of Youth last time was relatively disappointing given what was expected of him off his 2-year-old form, and I just feel like he's a horse that may not have really taken a step forward off his juvenile season. He projects to get a good trip in this race because he's more of a closing type. I just think he's probably more likely to garner a minor award than actually win the race. I'm interested in some long shots in this race, and one of those is the number 9, Sir Winston. Speaking of closers, he's got the highest Timeform US late pace rating in the field of 103, and that's typically something you want to look for in races that are predicted to feature a fast pace. I liked his effort last time out in the Tampa Bay Derby. I thought he was somewhat interesting going into that race, and for whatever reason, he just seemed to lose interest around the far turn. It was almost as if Julien Leparoux sort of gave up on him because he got so far back coming around the 3/8 pole. Once they got into the stretch, though, this horse really got to running, and he was finishing faster than anybody as they crossed the wire. It really bodes well for his ability to stretch out to this mile and an eighth distance, and I think he's a horse that really is built for stamina, and if this race comes apart at the end, he could be running on best of all late. I'm not sure that he's quite good enough to beat this field at this time, but he's a horse that I would definitely want to use if I'm playing any kind of exotics because he's going to be a bigger price than a horse like Signal Man, who also is in a similar position. I'm using him, but my top pick is the number 14, Aquadini, and bear with me on this one because I know it's a bit of a wacky selection. He's 30-1 on the morning line. Just watching this horse's races, I get the feeling that he's really moving forward right now. I liked his maiden win 2 back at the fairgrounds. If you watch that race, I know the final time is a little bit slow, but he was really moving powerfully through the lane. I love the way this horse is built. I love his stride. He's got this really fluid action to him, and he's bred to run all day. He's by Bernardini. His dam Indian Pond was a stakes winner going a mile and an eighth. She was actually stakes place going as far as a mile and a quarter on a synthetic track. And they stretched him out, or they rather cut him back slightly last time in an optional claiming race at the fairgrounds while stepping him up in class, and I thought he ran exceptionally well that day because the fairgrounds track was color-coded light blue in Timeform US PPs, indicating that it was a day that favors closers, and this horse actually set a reasonably fast pace up front. He opened up a large margin around the far turn, took almost a 5-length lead into the stretch, seemed to get a little bit unfocused at the end of this race. He had a right to get tired though and was cut down by Courtyard, who is a nice horse in his own right. I just feel like Aquadini is one of these Dallas Stewart horses who is improving at the right time. I'm a little bit concerned about the number 14 post position because that's a really difficult slot, especially for a long shot, but he's going to be a big price in this race, and I'm not sure that all of the runners towards the inside are going to be that intent on trying to make the front end, and I could see Corey Lannery getting aggressive with this horse from the outside post position and getting over into a decent spot. If he gets over and works out a trip into the first turn, I could really see this horse outrunning his odds, and I'm going to take a shot at a big price with the number 14 Aquadini in the Bluegrass on Saturday. Now let's send it back to the studio.
Time for our best bet segment here on Out of the Gate. Mike Bernaira, analyst, you found something at Keeneland. Explain.
Yeah, you're going to stick around after the Bluegrass for race number 11, Maidens on the Turf. This is a Shug McGahee 3-year-old filly making her seasonal debut. Hungry Kitten, she's number 9. We're going to look at her career debut, end of the year last year at Aqueduct. This looks like a pure prep race to me. This horse was not ready to run, got far back in this field early. But you're going to see her from here on out start making a pretty good run to the end of this race. This is a good field of horses in front of her. This horse has a huge pedigree by Kitten's Joy out of Shug's Hungry Island, who was a multiple graded stakes winner on turf. And this horse was just getting started at the end of this race. I think she needed this one. She's first off the layoff here at Keeneland. This is a race where I think she's going to take a big step forward.
Really like the way she was reaching out for ground at the end of that race. Matt, your best bet, boy, went real fast last time out. Can the turn back in distance slow down much better?
Yeah, that's kind of my thought in here anyway. We talk about, won the battle, lost the war. That was the situation with Much Better in the Gotham. Let's go back to that replay right now. You're going to see he's still well clear as they're getting ready to hit the top of the lane. You can't see the fractions, but he threw down 44 and 2 for a half mile beneath Mike Smith. Victor Espinoza has the mount here on Saturday. I just like the fact that he kept going on. Initially, I looked at the race and said, 4 basically across the wire. How good could it have been? You look and see the fractions that this horse set and the fact that he didn't totally pack it in at a flat mile. I think you turn him back in distance. Look, he might be the favorite. Either he or Mucho, I think, will be. It's a short field in the Bay Shore, the 6th race at Aqueduct on Saturday. But if you can get somewhere in that 7 or 8 to 5 range, I think I'd be willing to take that.
I'll go to Keeneland in the Shakertown Stakes. It's a turf sprint, and I'm going to go with the number 6, Will Call, 6-1 on the morning line. Javier Castellano has the mount for Brad Cox. Now, I'm hoping that Brad's not using this race as a prep for the turf sprint on Derby Day, a race that he won last year, second off the layoff. But here he is in his most recent start at Keeneland, the Woodford 2-back, and he was far behind in the early portion of this race, and he's just going to eventually level off once he does change leads, and he comes with a good run this last 16th of a mile to finish second behind Buchero. Off this race, he ran in the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. That was a race, of course, where Stormy Liberal and World of Trouble just dominated. Horses were having a lot of trouble navigating the yielding surface that day, and I think Will Call was one of those horses. There's going to be speed in the Shakertown. It's up to Javier to work out a trip. I think Will Call will be coming with a late kick, again 6-1 on the morning line in the Shakertown. We thank you for watching Out of the Gate, and we urge you to follow all of DRF TV's latest offerings. Please follow on social media on Twitter at DRF Video, and for the latest news and notes from America's Turf Authority Daily Racing Forum, please follow on Twitter at DRF Inside Post. That's it for this week. Best of luck when your horse is great. Out of the Gate.